Now, joining us now, live. This is going to be fun. We've got Senator Chap Petersen, Democrat, Northern Virginia, and he is with us. By the way, Chap Petersen, a founding advertiser and sponsor of the John Fredericks Show since its inception 10 years ago. And, of course, now Chap has one of the most successful, burgeoning, growing law firms in the history of Virginia, actually. And he's with us, Democrat, and then Republican Bill Stanley, who started the whole firestorm yesterday by resigning his post after Tommy Norment put the legislation in to cave on guns. So let's start with Chap. Chap Petersen, great to have you. You're live on the John Fredericks Show with Senator Bill Stanley. What the hell happened yesterday, Chap?
Well, good morning, John, and good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Chap.
I don't really know. I got down there, and needless to say, we got gavelled into the session, and next thing I knew, the majority leader's making a motion to defer the session until November 18, where myself and probably everybody else in the world has plans, and next thing I knew, basically the session blew up, and we had all these people from all over Virginia that were there protesting us, protesting each other, and people with very strong viewpoints. I thought it was going to be an exciting, at least one day, maybe 2 days of debates and action, and the next thing I know, we're all pulling out of town.
So, Bill, I mean, you got an email at midnight that your majority leader put in legislation to basically cave to the Democrats. You resigned. Then they begged you to come back. Did Chap know that you resigned?
I don't know that Chap did. Certainly, I got it. I got news about 10 o'clock that the bill had been dropped, and of course saw the front page headlines that were coming out the next morning. I thought it was contrary to what we had articulated to our caucus as leadership, and so I felt compelled to, and I think it was contrary to what our ideals and principles were going into this thing. So I tendered my resignation, actually announced it on your radio show, and you should be very glad because every news reporter must listen to the John Fredericks Radio Show because they all then surrounded my office and started asking questions. So I did try to keep it from Chap because I didn't want to upset Chap. I know he was driving down probably that morning. So he's a good friend of mine.
Very upset you didn't consult with me first.
Well, if I have to hire a lawyer, you know who I'm hiring.
There you go.
Scott Servo.
For those of you that don't know, Scott Servo and Chap Petersen were partners in a law firm for a while until Chap went on his own to make a lot more money.
Not only that, we grew up together as lawyers in the Fairfax County Jennings courthouse, Bernard Jennings courthouse. So we all used to be the young trial rats that would run around the General District Court and run up to Circuit Court and run down. And then we all kind of collect and get together and swap war stories. So I've known Chap for umpteen years, and I must admit on the air, I've admitted to Chap, I've even said this down in the floor of the Senate, that I got into a fight with my homeowners association in Fairfax City because I had a Chap Petersen for city council sign in my yard, and they said that violated the HOA rules. So there you go. I was voting for Chap before anybody else. I thought he was a Republican. So
you were for Chap before there was a Chap.
Exactly. I voted for Chap before I ever voted against anything Chap proposed in the Senate.
So, Senator Petersen, let me ask you this: did the Democrats win the narrative yesterday? Do you now have the advantage over the Republicans' decision to adjourn and basically abandon debate on any of these bills?
You know, John, I'm not smart enough to figure that stuff out. To me, it's not a question of narrative. It's a question of, look, these are public safety issues. We come down, we debate them. And by the way, I wasn't planning on voting for all of the Governor Northam bills. Some I've supported, some I was not so crazy about. Some needed to be amended, quite frankly. And I even would understand if we were to have a debate and then perhaps, maybe defer it for 4 weeks or so. But the short answer is I don't think it's a narrative so much as I do think people were expecting some type of action, some type of legislative action, or at least legislative debate, and that didn't happen. And, people running in competitive districts, they're going to make of that what they will. I mean, Bill and I are both in uncontested districts, so I don't think either one of us is a great thermometer on what's going on. But, you've got 6 or 8 contested elections and people that are knocking on doors every night and talking to voters. They'll be the ones to tell you that voters, they're unhappy that there's just no legislative action on this.
It all depends on what the district is. In my district, you probably knock on all those doors, and you would find uniformly that they were happy that their Second Amendment rights were not infringed upon by us in the General Assembly. So you go to Fairfax, you probably would have a much different viewpoint. So, it's amazing how you can get varying opinions, and I guess that's what makes America great, depending on the region that you're in. But I think it's probably more of an issue in Northern Virginia, the gun control issue, than it is where I'm from.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, live Richmond, trucking the truth across America. We're with two state senators today, opposite party, Senator Chap Petersen, Democrat, Fairfax, Senator Bill Stanley, Republican, both in leadership. Stanley, a Republican from Southside in the Danville, Franklin County area. So let me ask you something, Chap. Yesterday, when we were in the Senate chamber, I kind of felt like your leader, Dick Saslaw, who's a friend of mine, and Justin Fairfax were kind of asleep at the wheel because Justin Fairfax, the lieutenant governor, whatever problems he's got, he does run the Senate, and he's up in the gallery, he's schmoozing and having a good time, and you guys are late. Finally, he gets there. All he had to do was call on Dick Saslaw, the minority leader, and then Saslaw could have started putting in votes for
petitions for discharge
on the floor, and you could have debated that. And instead, he calls on Tommy Norment, who then gives it to the Lynchburg Senator Steve Newman, who calls for adjournment. So it's like Saslaw didn't even have his act together, or Fairfax was asleep at the wheel. But didn't you guys kind of just screw that up?
Well, the short answer is no, because look, the Republicans have the majority of votes. We could put in a petition for discharge. What's going to happen? It's going to get rejected. At the end of the day, look, we're in the minority, not by much, and maybe not for much longer, but we're in the minority right now. So, Justin could have given the microphone to me, to Dick, to anybody. We could make motions all day long. What's going to happen with them? They're going to get denied. So at the end of the day, look, the Republicans control the Senate. They control the House. And if they want to adjourn and send us home, nothing I can do about it. And so that's how it works. So the short answer is I don't think there was much that the lieutenant governor or the minority leader could have done about it. Yeah, sure. In retrospect, if we'd known that's what was going to happen, maybe in morning hour, we could have, maybe been a little bit more overt in trying to get some type of action going. But again, we're in the minority, so the majority rules.
How does this play out, Bill, going into November?
Well, I think we all go back to our silos and we campaign and we run on the issues that matter to our localities. I think this will be a part of the discussion in some of those contested races. I think what you're going to see is, and I think you said it earlier with the narrative. The narrative is now we ducked, covered, and ran.
Yes.
And that's what you've seen it already in the editorials. You're going to see more of it. I think it motivates our base that are those people that are for the Second Amendment and protection of all constitutional rights. It motivates their base. But I think the important piece of this is that you're probably going to see a lot of that Bloomberg money come flooding and pouring in. So, that may have an impact on more outside money coming into contested campaigns where the Democrats want to, they want to take over the Senate and the House. And so it may make this a little more stickier, a little more nastier, and a little more contentious. But, every 4 years in the Senate, we always have those races. I mean, the Senate, as Chap says, is usually 21-19 going one way or the other. And it's been that way for a while.
Senator Stanley, a lot of our callers thought the Republicans should have stayed and fought these bills and flushed them out and defeated them. We had Speaker Cox on earlier who said he didn't want to turn it into a 6-day sideshow. But there's a contingent of my base of listeners that would have preferred to debate the bills on their merits, and if they were worthy of voting for, fine. If not, defeat them all and go home victorious, and then let the voters decide going forward, rather than what some people are saying was a cut and run strategy, which certainly the Democrat Senator Stanley are going to play that up the narrative.
Well, look, I was one of them in the caucus and in the majority leadership that said, look, let's stay and fight. Let's have this debate. I think if you delay, then you give away at least a little bit of the story in terms of the narrative. Let's create a counter narrative that we're trying to find solutions that will prevent tragedies like this. Let's stand strong for the people that we represent who do not believe any constitutional right should be infringed upon by the government. Let's have that debate. Let's do what we're supposed to do, but let's be serious about it. I was outgunned, outmanned, and outvoted on that, and I understand. And certainly, I'm a team player with my caucus, so I went along with it. And the strategy was developed basically that and I understand the strategy. I don't disagree with it necessarily. Was that let's be deliberate about the consideration of these bills. We have a bipartisan commission already in place called the Crime Commission. It's actually led by Democrats mostly. So why not put it there? And that was, let's have a real good look at these before we get into what is kabuki political sideshow theater that Governor Northam was putting in place. I think we all agreed that this was a political stunt, or a belief that it was a political stunt from the governor, and meant to tip the scales in the upcoming November election. So we didn't want to be a part of that necessarily, but I was one of those that totally agreed. Let's fight. I mean, that's what I come down here for. But let's offer alternatives. Let's try to find consensus. I think Chap and I would agree that even from either side of the aisle, Democrat or Republican, there's one thing we have in common. We hate gun violence. We are against senseless killings. We're against these mass shootings. We may have different opinions on how we get to where we're going to be, but let's start from the premise that we do agree on something.
So you would have preferred to stay to fight?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Petersen, when you were driving to Richmond, or you went to bed, I guess, Monday night, and you find out that Senate Majority Leader Tommy Normant files a bill, which is basically what we were calling a bill to cave, it was I'm not sure it was thought through, but it was basically banning guns at all municipal facilities, making it a felony. So like if my wife went to pay a ticket and by mistake it didn't take her gun out of her bag, she could be a felon and have to do 60 months. So that was insane. But when you saw that, and you saw that Normant was caving and giving away the store, what was your reaction to that?
Well, the irony is, I actually think those bills, dealing with municipal ordinances and banning guns in certain places, are frankly the least effective. I'm more interested in bills that go to certain types of high-capacity magazine silencers, or trying to separate people that have psychological or mental issues from gun possession. I mean, those are the issues I'm more interested in. Banning somebody from walking into a municipal building most mass shootings take place in buildings where guns are banned. So, I don't. Ironically, and this is the discussion we needed to have, because, in our own caucus for about an hour, we had the Secretary of Public Defense came in to brief us on the bills, and we actually had a pretty vigorous discussion, again, in our own caucus, without going into the merits, about, what the bills could do, who might get swept up into them unintentionally, inadvertently. And so this is the type of debate we needed to have in the Courts Committee. And, as Bill can tell, Bill's exactly right. I had, Moms Demand Action came and visited me. I also had representatives from the Second Amendment groups come and visit me. And I was happy to talk to both of them. I was in my office pretty much all morning. And, again, I don't see why we're afraid of having this debate. It's an important debate, and it may be that some bills pass or no bills pass. I just felt like we should have at least had the debate.
And see, there's where you find that we agree on this. And he has one issue there, which I think we could all agree on, which is keeping firearms out of the hands of people that have mental illness. Because you saw that report from the Secret Service that just came out that said basically one of the main root causes of these mass shootings is a mental health issue. 2/3 of all of those had mental health issues. So you start from where you could agree on. And then from there, you kind of try to create legislation that's going to be preventative in nature. And I think, along with Chap, that banning guns in public places doesn't do what it's intended to do. It may have, good intentions, but I don't think in follow through it does anything, because, as I said before, the shooter in Virginia Beach, there's probably a sign outside, because Virginia Beach banned firearms in that building. There's probably a sign at the entryway somewhere. He probably has seen that sign. He didn't sit there and say, I can't go in there and shoot because they banned firearms. That he didn't turn around and take him back to his car. He went in, and in fact, because that was a soft target, his resistance was to what he was trying to do was lessened. So Let's find solutions that are going to keep these families from mourning senseless loss from a mentally deranged or angry person in the workplace who decides he's going to get his revenge and his 15 minutes of fame.
So here's the whole point of the thing, right? In 5 minutes, we've had a mini robust debate on some of the gun legislation that has been proposed. Senator Petersen, Democrat Fairfax, just said most shootings are in locations where guns are banned, so he's not particularly interested in that. Senator Stanley, you just gave your position on mental health, and you had, I think, six bills that you wanted to put in. And I guess it gets back to the beginning. Why aren't we in the General Assembly debating these today? Because that was, even though I get the sideshow thing, that's what everybody went for. So that's why I'm unsure of why this thing is over and why we couldn't have had the debate that we're having right now.
Well, and I'm going to just say, and I think Chap, from the 10 years I've had the honor to serve with him and other Democrats, because of the shortness of the sessions, we're not like Washington, D.C. This is not our career. We want to go home, get our job done in Richmond, and turn around and go home. But we sit down with each other, break bread, and try to find consensus. There are issues of partisanship that will never be we'll never quite get together on them, and we'll pontificate, and we'll go back and forth on points of personal privilege or arguing and debating a bill. But we do so civilly in a chamber that we all respect. And ultimately, if you look at everything that comes out of the Senate, we try to work together, and you'll see more 40-0 measures than you will 21-19s. And I have had friends in the House of Delegates in the Republican majority who say, I bring my bill over, it passes 40-0. I got Chap to vote for it. I'm thinking it's going to sail through the House, and they kill it. And I say, why did you kill the bill? And they said, because any bill that comes across from the Senate 40-0 is suspect. If it comes across at 21-19, it's got a chance to pass. So there you go.
Senator Petersen, where do we go from here?
Well, I got to go to work, but seriously, we're going to be campaigning. People are going to be debating this, and as I said, Bill and I are in our respective silos, and I was speaking at a community group last night, and we're just going to keep on representing people, and there's about 6 or 8 races that are going to basically decide how this thing's going to go. And it really just depends on how it plays out in those races, and we'll find out. It is, John, it's funny. I hate to see the politics of this state just sort of boil down to the same old issues cycle after cycle. I'm not a fan of it. That's why I kind of actually like the special session, that if we could have come in and addressed the issue like Florida did and passed some legislation everyone could agree on. I'm not saying Second Amendment gun control won't always be an issue. It always will be. But at least I think we could have said, okay, at least we've had some progress or some consensus. Now it's just, back to the drawing board, and, maybe we're going to get the same actors play again. And I don't know. I'd just like to see us move on to something else. But obviously we can't because we haven't resolved it.
I agree with Chap. See, there you go. Bipartisanship. Right here on the John Fredericks Radio Show.
Let me ask you something, Senator Stanley. We've only got a minute here. How does Tommy Norman survive this?
I think he survives this. I think he's been a good leader. He has. I mean, look, we all make mistakes. We're not perfect. I'm not happy with him on this bill, but quite frankly, overall, he's kept some really different personalities together. I mean, you talk from Amanda Chase to Dick Black to Richard Stewart to Ryan McDougal. I mean, think of the lineup in our caucus, and he's been able to actually keep us tight. Think about the strategy that he adopted. We think we did catch the Democrats flat-footed. They didn't know it was coming.
That was obvious in the chamber yesterday.
And clearly, if you're a leadership of a fractured caucus, you could not have pulled that off. And he did so masterfully, and so he deserves a lot of credit for that. I think he's going to win his seat, and I think we all will continue to hold him in high regard and put him in leadership. And he knows the rules, and he knows how to play politics, and especially when it comes right down to it, he tries to protect the members of his caucus.
Chap, why were you guys caught flat-footed yesterday? I mean, that's just inside baseball. I mean, didn't you guys have any caucus conference calls and say, well, what happens if Norman tries to abandon this thing by doing an adjournment? I mean, was inconceivable to me. In fact, I was just sitting in the gallery with incoming Senator Joe Morrissey, who was like, he just couldn't believe you guys hadn't figured this out.
Well, without going into our caucus strategy, I'll just say we thought that the session was going to happen in good faith. Maybe we were a little bit naive, but at the end of the day, John, look, we're the minority. There's really no mechanism or maneuver we could have done to change the outcome. I mean, yes, maybe we could have figured out a way to make a couple extra speeches or get a couple more floor votes, but at the end of the day, if the Republicans want to adjourn without taking up the legislation, it's going to happen. I mean, by the time we got to courts committee in the afternoon, we knew that was going to happen, and what can we do? We all made our speeches, but at the end of the day, we're in the minority for now.
Chap went down swinging. In the motion to adjourn, Chap was standing up trying to, it's a non-debatable motion, but he was up there trying to take a swing.
Parliamentary inquiry, but yeah.
I saw him, and he got shouted down. Hey, let me just ask you guys, something, Chap, on the Democratic side.
Yes, sir.
Got to go. I couldn't find Roz Dance yesterday. Did she just bail out on you guys?
She was not there. I don't know what the backstory is. She may have had a previous engagement, but I don't know. She's still the elected official from Petersburg. I don't know where she was.
And she's a great person.
Well, we know where Senator Frank Wagner was. He was he had a bunch of
lottery
scratch-offs.
He's got scratchers.
Frank Wagner.
That's actually his job. Is he's the scratcher tester. So they put a bunch of lucky sevens in his desk and he scratches them off.
So Wagner's got a job as what's his job? Deputy lottery scratch-off master.
That's probably it.
Actually, he got a job. Governor Northam gave him a job so we can get him out of the Senate, maybe win the seat back, and quadruple his pension or something of that nature.
Maybe.
It's the way the game is played, unfortunately. But Senator Wagner, if you're listening to me right now, thanks for all you've done with roads, and I hope your scratch-off career, I hope you hit some big ones. John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America.